Hello and welcome back to another garden update, another nice beautiful day before the harsh summers set in. It is already hitting about 84 during the days, but full summer is going to be more like 98, and that's going to be miserable. So I figured we'd start out in the front, and as you can see here, we had a windstorm and it took out the gates and messed up the side fences here too. One gate was ripped off completely, the other one was half ripped off. So those are the gates right there, and I kind of rigged them up so I've got basically a fort now, as you can see. Pretty awesome, right? So I pulled out the other posts. They all had concrete on them. That was a joy, fun, as you can imagine. And put in new posts, put an actual properly sized post there for the gate, because they only had 4x4s there before, and that's way undersized for a big gate like that. So proper post, proper high strength concrete on that, and these are done. I'm just waiting on the gates, which I ordered, and they should hopefully be here Monday. So we'll see. Hopefully that'll be done next week and I won't have to worry about it anymore. But I'm gonna take you out front. We've had lots and lots of rose blooms. They've been going crazy. I love these pink roses. They've got just a touch of darker pink on the outside of the petals. They just look really good. And then these are just a really dark red. They're not as dark now because they're toward the end of their blooming. I've got one over there that's a little darker because it's not quite as old as these. And then of course we got these roses. These are all flowers that I planted there, and we've got some weeds. That's just gonna happen, and as they get to a certain point I'll go and pull them all out. But I'm not super crazy about going after it nonstop. There's always gonna be weeds. So these are those Firebush. I don't know if I mentioned them before. I planted these last year. They're perennial here, zone 8B, and I thought that they were dead, and I was just about to pull them out. This was like 2 weeks ago, and I started seeing the growth coming back on them right there and there, and they're actually coming up the existing stems. So I was thinking at first about cutting them back and pruning them back, but they've started coming up the stems. And so I've never grown these before. I mean, these are not even a year old yet. They'll be a year old in a couple months, but I want to see how much they come back and see if they're even needed to be pruned. I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't have hurt them either way, but I'm leaving them for the time being. So there's my rosemary getting pretty big. I need to start pruning it so that it bushes out more. And then here's the other rose. It's actually not as dark red as it was yesterday, so it's more of a pinkish red now. So, but and this is another one of those pink ones. It just doesn't have any on it right now. And then we'll come up here, and I actually redid this bed, which is kind of a bed. And it's what we've got in the middle is a grapefruit tree. It's a couple years old, and it's pretty scrawny. And then what I took out all the old mulch and put some new compost and everything in there, new mulch down, and then I put in 6 marigolds around the perimeter. And you can see a couple of them are blooming, little babies. So we got marigolds around the perimeter now, and hopefully those will get big. This is some type of wildflower. I've seen them bloom, and they're nice purple blooms, so I just left it in there just because, why not? So going back to the backyard. I've got all the little baby seedling trays are all done, and they've been transplanted either into these little nursery pots here or to the big pots, which I'll show you all those here in just a minute. This is that tomato plant, and it's been struggling with a little disease. I've pruned it back a lot. You can see this one here. So we'll see how it goes, but I have never had good luck with tomato plants, and it's either disease or it's bugs or it's the heat. It's always something with tomatoes, and I never have luck with them. So that's why you only see the one. I don't have a bunch of them, because it's just, like I said, always something. So at some point we're gonna have to find a place for all these, and I have no idea where. No idea. And you may be wondering, why pots everywhere? And that's because a few reasons. The biggest reason is the soil here is just garbage. It's terrible, and it was an absolute, I wouldn't say nightmare, it was a lot of work getting those front beds to where they could, that whole L piece here, and then the whole big bed out front over there. That was a lot of work just for those, because of how horrible and compacted and clay and everything is in the soil here. It's just, it's a pain. So just doing those was a lot of work, and I would not want to do huge rows back here. Plus, there's a septic system back here too. So it's just, no, I don't want anything in the ground. It's just too much work, too much pain. Not the right area for it. So everything's in pots. And then my raised bed, which is basically a big giant pot. So the good thing about pots is you can move them around as needed, as the seasons change, or they have different needs, less sun, more sun, whatever. You can move it to a better area. And then of course you can also grow it like here on top of concrete. I've got a bunch of, well, this isn't concrete, this is asphalt, but there's a lot of areas, growing space here I can utilize with everything in pots. So just for me, that's just the way I'm doing it. So most of these here, everything here with like a stake sticking out, it's a pepper plant, a certain type of pepper plant. So habanada right here, that's a little baby one I just transplanted this morning. And that's a little tiny bell. That's a bundle of cayenne. There's like 4 of them growing in one bundle, and I'm not gonna separate them, and they'll grow. Believe me, they will grow like that. Another habanada, 2 habanadas. Those are looking beautiful, and this is a bullnose bell pepper. These are sunflowers, all 3 of these pots. These 4 are a different kind. They're taller or bigger sunflower, and then the shorter sunflowers here, you can tell they're a little bit smaller of a variety. They're all doing super well. And I'm actually going to do a separate video on how I fertilize and the type of fertilizer I use. So that'll be coming up soon as well. And then as you can see here, I've got a big row of pots here, and I put down some weed barrier underneath. So I mowed this as low as I could, and then I put the weed barrier down because, first of all, your weeds will try to grow up into your pot, and then you'll start having weeds poking out, and you're like, how are they getting in there? And they're coming in through the bottom, going all the way up. So you just don't want to deal with that. And if you've got your pots like this without a weed barrier, they'll be growing up all in between, and it'll end up being a big mess. So weed barrier, that helps, that solves all that. So that's not a big deal anymore. And so all these I've gone over in a previous video. There's a huge variety of different things: marigolds, sunflowers, onions, various herbs, lavender. That's what these are, and they're going crazy. We got some garlic right here, a few other kinds of flowers, and a few other kinds of just plants that are for pollinators and things like that. And then on this side, these are all peppers here. They've got the stakes, and there's some parsley there, Hummingbird Mint there, and these are Swiss chard, which Swiss chard is very similar to spinach, except it's supposed to do well in warmer weather. Spinach, when it's this warm, it bolts and goes to seed, unless you're growing in shade, and even then it just does not like anything really above 65, I'd say, degrees. Because I think I've got some back there, I'll show you just a second. It's I'm pretty sure it's going to seed, but that's fine. It's all good. I've got plenty of other stuff. So this is the Swiss chard, and it's not quite as sweet as spinach. It's a little more bitter and a little more earthy tasting, but it's good. I like it. And the fact that it grows in warmer weather, I mean, this is a full sun area. So this area here gets full sun most of the day, and they have never had an issue with that sitting here. So I really like that. So that tells me that they're going to do pretty good for at least another month or two. And then here is the raised bed, and I've got 10 pepper plants planted in there with some cages. I only had a few cages, so the rest get stakes, bamboo stakes. And I put 4 marigolds in here, you know, 2 on each end. I didn't want to plant too much. I'm thinking about putting maybe a basil or 2 in here as well. So, but I don't want to overcrowd the peppers. Peppers get really big, and they need lots of room and lots of nutrients, lots of water, and lots of sun. So I don't want to overcrowd them too much. And then straight down the middle, those are all onions, and those are Texas early day onions, or short day onions. So hopefully by the time this starts getting really hot, the peppers will be big enough and be able to kind of partially shade those out, and they'll be happy. We'll see. We get a lot of rain here, so I've tried to grow onions once before, but that was in the ground, so they died. So we'll see how these go. And over here we've got my beans. There's I think 22 bean plants here, and I had this so these are actually trellis / tomato cages, and they're triangle in shape, and you can actually, what I did here was they're adjustable, so what I adjust them to be mostly straight, and then I just put the stakes in, zip tied them, and they are pretty sturdy. And so that's why these are bush beans, but they still do like to grab on and grow up a little bit. So you can see here, he's growing up. We got a couple beans on there. I would put the camera in the right spot for you. And there's a bunch of beans everywhere on these. I mean, they've got flowers everywhere, so they're another week, and these are gonna be just crazy, loaded down. And I eat green beans like non-stop, so this will be awesome. Here we just got a couple plants, more parsley. That's a Hummingbird Mint, and that's a salvia, which has gotten completely decimated by caterpillars. It's caterpillar season. I put some BT Thuricide. It's a bacteria that once caterpillars eat it, they die, and so that's hopefully stopped it. At first I was waiting because I try not to use anything. I mean, that's completely organic, so it's perfectly safe and fine, but I still try not to use anything unless it's like an absolute must. And these were getting so bad to where I was like, yeah, this has to stop, because I mean, we've got a few leaves here that are just completely gone basically on this one. So I was like, enough is enough. You've almost killed these guys. And here is the salad bar. That's how I like to call it, because this is all salad stuff right here, well, most of it. This is a mixture of Swiss chard. Actually, there might actually be there's a spinach in the middle of there, and 2 marigolds, and then Swiss chard, several different Swiss chard plants in there. They're just kind of bundled together. And then I've got Merlot lettuce, which is a red lettuce, in there as well. Another marigold, Swiss chard, and all 3 of those, and then a little more of the Merlot lettuce, marigold there. A lot of these I've figured out that they can grow in clumps like this pretty well. Obviously, if you've got a bigger pot and you let them have more room, they're going to get a little bit bigger. But if you're having this for salad, I mean, this is big. That's a big leaf. Oh, okay, there we go. That's a big leaf. Not all of them are that big, but I mean, most of them are. And that's growing in a clump with a bunch of other stuff in there. So I mean, yeah, they'll get a little bit bigger if you thin them out, but this is getting me a lot more for the same amount of growing area. So I do it like this on these. All the brassicas, these type of brassicas, the leafy greens, they do well growing in clumps like this. There's some mustard greens here, and they're getting massive. I mean, giant leaf. It's a 1-gallon pot, and I think there's only 1 mustard plant in that one. These have 1 or 2, so yeah, mustard gets pretty big, and you don't want to grow more. Last season I grew tons in a plant, kind of like this, except, or tons in a pot, except more than this, and they were still edible. They just did not get very big. I mean, they got like this big at the biggest. I mean, a couple maybe got a little bit bigger than that, but the mustards definitely appreciate a little bit more space and more soil to grow in. And this is spinach. This is the spinach that I was mentioning before, where I believe it is going to seed, even though it's over here. And this is a partial sun area. It gets shade most of the day. In about 2 hours, it'll get direct sunlight. So that's why I picked this area specifically for these, because none of these like summer heat. These are not summer plants. So I've got them over here to make them last as long as possible. I can get as many salads as I can before they go to seed. This Merlot lettuce is doing really good. So yeah, what I'm thinking is this is going to seed, because you can see here, this leaf right here is really pointed. And that's kind of what they do, is this leaf is more of a rounded, that's a typical spinach leaf right there. But the newer ones are coming in more pointed. And so that's what it'll do when it starts going to seed. So I imagine over the next week, that one will most likely be going to seed, and then I'll probably just pull it out. And that's fine. Like I said, I've gotten several spinach leaves off of that already, and I really didn't expect it to last long, because again, spinach does not like warm temperatures. It is a cold temperature plant. So moving on, this is another Merlot lettuce just by itself in that pot, and then these are the last of my radishes, and they're gonna be getting pulled out probably next weekend. They haven't done too much, and it's really too warm for them anyways, so they're not liking it. So that is it. Got to get you pretty well caught up. Yeah, like I said, I've got all these over here. I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do with them yet. I mean, some of them are gonna go like in the front gardens. A few of them are gonna go in pots. I'm gonna buy a few more pots, not many. But then the rest of these I may try to give away. There's a big variety, a bunch of different stuff in here. Lupine and catnips, some peppers, marigolds, parsley, oregano, all kinds of, I mean, there's a ton of basil here. These are doing fantastic. They're just looking really good. This is all basil right here, and they are looking pretty spectacular. This is some mint, and this is salvia, and that's a bunch of oregano back there. So I have plenty growing, I believe. But anyways, oh, the last thing I wanted to mention was this is the ginger from last year. So of course it's getting demolished by bugs. I'm gonna have to probably spray it. They seemed to love it last year too, but it actually finally popped back up, and so I was worried that it wasn't going to, and then it finally did. So that'll be good. Hopefully it'll fill up. Tons of leafy greens coming out of there, and then by summer I believe I'll be harvesting or seeing what's in there. It's the first time I've grown ginger, so we'll see about that. Anyways, this is a very long video now, so I thank everybody for watching and hanging in there for 19 minutes. I just had a lot to show, and anyways, take care, have a good day, and I will catch you next time.